Well, they did it. They finally did it. After 18 years, they finally did it. But people are so busy with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. I don't even know how to really start this review off, honestly. There is a lot I would like to say, and I think we should just go down the events in this chapter to get to the good, meaty, juicy stuff. We begin the chapter with a quite melancholic Daisy who is jump scared by Lucy, who reminds her that the bell for first period has rung. Daisy rushes to class where she soon finds herself drifting into her melancholy once again. And on a side note, Amalu is such a cute name. I don't even know why, but like Lonnie Amalu, I just like it. Good job, Teshi, on this one specific weird thing. We get more Daisy being all sad and moody, and Lucy seems to feel bad about this. We cut to later in the school day where everyone files outside for gym class, with everyone feeling the stinging cold but Paulo, and later we see Daisy, which is a nice touch because we know that they both have super thick fur. Lucy steps up to the plate to keep up with Daisy, who is still caught in her feelings, and we get a nice little conversation of Lucy actually being nice for once, which is odd because typically Lucy doesn't really seem to care about her friends all that much, at least not outwardly, but we'll accept this turn of heart and give Lucy a good girl point. I guess I can kind of see her doing this because she felt bad for yelling at Paulo even though she was right. Daisy is pretty standoffish about receiving help from Lucy, which is understandable given their past interactions. The last time the two really talked, it ended in a shouting match. Lucy prods Daisy over her boy troubles, and Daisy strikes back with how this guy is all these wonderful things and that he'd never be interested in someone like her. Lucy's bullshit-o-meter goes off and she invites Daisy to Burger-Tron after school. And so they go, and Daisy gets all nervous seeing Paulo working behind the counter, and Paulo gets nervous as well. Not one to beat around the bush, Lucy grabs Daisy by the hand and drags her to the counter. It gets real awkward real fast, but once more Lucy leads the charge and starts their order, but her annoyed attitude changes when she sees how beat Paulo looks. He tries talking to Daisy, but she just walks away and Paulo finishes the transaction. But their interaction is not over yet, as Paulo gets real sad and hits Lucy with an apology, but also tells her that bringing Daisy there to remind him of his failures is in poor taste, and then he goes to the back to work on dishes. This is an excellent moment, and you actually really feel bad for Lucy here. She's genuinely trying to do the right thing, and it's been misinterpreted. It's natural, and it feels earned given what's come before. This is good drama. We need more of this kind of thing. Lucy gets the grub, and Daisy feels even worse after drinking her milkshake, and it's her favorite. Lucy cuts through the crap though, but Daisy isn't having any of it. Lucy is having even less of it, calling her out and telling her she's trying to solve whatever stupid problem the two are having, when Daisy blurts out that she loves Paulo so much. And it hurts her. She's upset that she isn't cool enough for him. She can't ever be that type of girl. Daisy doesn't want to make the same mistakes with Paulo that she did with Mike, even though Mike admitted later that they should have dated and there was no reason for them not to have. But okay, she's super sad about all this. And Lucy, of course, is the bastion of big brain energy here because she just tells Daisy to confess to Paulo anyway, which is the smart thing to do. Daisy claps back with Lucy's failures, and Lucy strikes back with experience being experience.
Do you have a bit of experience in that arena?
If you consider failure experience.
I consider experience.
And then Daisy brings up something I have questioned the comic on. Why Paulo, someone who has been known to just ask girls out that he likes, doesn't just ask Daisy out? Well, she thinks this means he doesn't like her, and obviously we all know it's because he feels unworthy of her love. For some reason. I mean, it's not like Jasmine also wasn't a super smart go-getter. And so Daisy runs off into the night, leaving behind a concerned Lucy, and somehow slams a door that would have most definitely closed slowly with a hydraulic. And then Paulo is there, and he heard most of the things. Somehow, like, no, seriously, how does this work? We see a clear shot of the area next to Lucy and he's nowhere to be seen. He was working in the back and now he's mopping, and even if Lucy didn't see him standing there, there's no way Daisy wouldn't have seen him. Also, the dog in the back here has lost his tail. I mean, this whole thing with Paulo just appearing is kind of a big plot hole and at the very least a contrivance, but okay, whatever. He heard her say a bunch of stuff and she didn't see him. So Lucy tries to talk to him to cover up the plot hole, but Paulo runs out because he doesn't want to hear about any of that, and I don't blame him. So Daisy walks in the rain crying that Paulo will never love her, but she pulls herself together because she's fucking based like that. But deep down, she still hurts. And then Paulo puts her in a chokehold. He apologizes for not knowing how Daisy felt, and Daisy frets over everything else. His job, his clothes, her looks, but Paulo lets her go. He wants her to look at him, but she is unable to, though finally does work up the courage. And yeah, I know, that damn smile. Paulo is relieved that Daisy was avoiding him because she loved him, not because she was mad at him, although she was a little bit upset with him. But anyway, she tries to explain, but realizes that Paulo must have overheard her and Lucy's conversation, which he did hear most of. Also, I like how they get a little bit closer in this panel, and while we're on the art for a moment, while the characters do look nice, I'm a little confused about the rain here. It seems to be falling on one vertical plane of existence. You can see it hitting Paulo and Daisy, but never the ground. Like, where is it going? Is it despawning before it hits the sidewalk or the grass or the road? Daisy gets flustered all over again, but Paulo is too love-struck to let it bother him. He thinks she is so fucking cute, and he likes cute a lot. This just leads to more smiling and flusteredness, and it's clear Paulo is just messing with her since the game has pretty much been called at this point. He throws her a bone. He says, it's really not that hard falling in love with your best friend, which he words this in a very strange way. Shouldn't he have actually said it's really not that hard to fall in love with your best friend? I don't know, just for me in my brainstem, the way he says it here just kind of is a little clunky, and I feel like this small little change would mean the same thing. It would flow a little bit better. More flustered crying from Daisy, who eventually takes refuge in Paulo's strong Somali arms, and then they hug it out. This is a fun page. It looks like there's clones of them hugging like a foot away. I know Teshi isn't a stranger to having the same character multiple times in the same panel, but each pose was always very different from the last. The change here is so negligible, it looks like there's doppelgangers. And when this page was first sent to the Fanel Discord, which you can totally check out, link in the description by the way, I thought it was a meme edit. I'm dead fucking serious. I was shocked to see this was the actual page. We get a pretty tender moment between the two. I will talk about it more in depth later, but I do want to say now that this line is pretty slick. But alas, Paulo must return to work, and they playfully banter over him getting fired. Daisy is beyond thrilled to be Paulo's girlfriend, and I mean just like Thrillville off the rails thrilled. She can't wait to ride Paulo. Paulo backs down though, insecure about their new relationship. Why would Daisy want him? She's destined for greatness. He worries that he will drag her down, but she assures him that he won't, and if he does, she'll be happy that they'll be together all the same, the way it's always been. And at the end of it all, Paulo and Daisy enter Burger-Tron laughing, and Lucy thinks the milkshakes are pretty good. Yay, the blue sky page panel thing finally came true. Well, there you have it. 18 years of one of the two biggest plot threads of BCB tied up in a bow. Not a nice, neat little bow, but a bow nonetheless. So what do I think? Well, y'all know me. This just didn't work for me. It doesn't hit, and I think the issue is that there is a fundamental flaw with this ship, and it's that I don't get it. Like, I get what this is meant to be on paper. This is the nerdy, unattractive, unpopular girl getting with the suave, attractive, popular guy. And hey, in that context, it works, right? Except by this point in the comic, most of these things aren't true anymore. I mean, Daisy is still a nerd, sure, but she isn't really unpopular, nor has anyone called her unattractive but herself. Abby and Augustus and even Mike liked her just fine. I know this is through the lens of people hitting on Lucy and not her, but we only really see that happen once, and it's in a flashback. I also get that part of this situation is that it's the irony of Daisy thinking all of these negative things about herself that simply aren't true. The issue is that it doesn't matter how Daisy feels about it because the reality of the situation is very different. And so beyond that, from a meta standpoint, Daisy does not work as the unattractive, unpopular type. And on the flip side, Paulo is not really that suave anymore. He's kind of a mess, and no amount of Daisy being his girlfriend is gonna fix that. Sure, he's still attractive, I suppose, but is he popular? I would argue that Daisy is more popular than he is. And so in this way, the basic core of what this ship is meant to be doesn't work. So it can't use that as a shield. So what if those things aren't true anymore? It can still work in other ways, right? Can it? Well, let's re-examine how these two have interacted and treated each other over the years. I know I've done this before, but more things have happened since then, and we have Raincheck's new perspective to look through. Think of this as a Paisy post-mortem, even though the ship is alive. You know what I mean. Daisy was Paulo's first friend upon his transfer to Roseville, and they will remain as such during this time, all throughout elementary and middle and early high school. Much happened during this time, including Paulo and Daisy finding love in other places. Paulo pined for Lucy at first, and then started flirting with anyone who would listen. Daisy would attach herself to Mike and later get really confused feelings for Augustus and then be with Abby. It is true what Daisy says here, that if there's a girl Paulo likes, he pursues her, and he didn't do that with Daisy. And likewise, though it's not said, Daisy also does the same, quite aggressively. So what's the deal here? Why didn't they, if they're so madly in love with each other that it hurts, talk to each other about this? Well, they didn't think they were worthy of each other. That doesn't make sense either, given how driven the two have been with the people they have pursued. Daisy, who had and still has the confidence of a rock, had no qualms about going after anyone. If she was so insecure as Teshi wants us to believe, why is she so confident all the time when it comes to boys? Especially Mike, who she coveted above all else, even when she was interested in other guys. She really thought she was worthy of Mike and not Paulo? And on the other hand, Paulo dated Jasmine, someone who is just as nerdy a busybody as Daisy, and it ended up not working out. That's already a bad sign for these two. Paulo clearly knew that Jasmine was super successful too, yet didn't think she was so successful that he couldn't date her. He didn't know that beforehand, sure, but when that became an issue for them, they ended up breaking up, with a little bit of Lucy love sprinkled in there for good measure. Man, this is really not looking good for these two. And of course, there are all the times that Paulo flat out refused or went back on his ideas of liking Daisy romantically. I will list them off now. First off, they seem pretty put off by the idea of having any young together as depicted at the end of Helping Hands, despite how the burden of parenthood played out. And Paulo seemed more interested in having his son than it being with Daisy specifically. How about this moment in Feline Festivities where he flat out refused to kiss Daisy? During the Silver Shore arc, David tries to get Paulo to move on from Tess and see there are other girls out there. David latches on to the idea of Paulo liking Daisy, and the Somali flat out shuts it down. She's too immature, and so David gives him a hypocritical situation, one in which Tess and Daisy are rulers of different kingdoms. They are both kidnapped, and Paulo, the hero, can only save one. And he chooses Daisy, and it makes sense because Daisy is his friend, his close friend, and he's known her for years well before Tess, and she still was his first friend after he became a womanizing jerk. And then Paulo gets it in his head that this means he is romantically interested in Daisy, but immediately goes back on it upon seeing Abby and Daisy together. And this isn't just an "aw dang it" moment. He goes full reverse, claiming that David brainwashed him. The next time they have an opportunity for some lovin' is when Abby dumps her and take heart. David tries to push the two together again, which Paulo flat out shuts down, and in fact goes out of his way to get Abby and Daisy back together again. I know the argument here is that Paulo did this because that's what Daisy would want, but also seems pretty adamant about not being romantically interested in her. In Scenic Route, Paulo and Daisy have a talk about their life after high school, where Daisy plans on going to a big university, maybe even one overseas. Paulo doesn't see himself having a bright academic career, but Daisy offers to bring him to a career show. This feels less romantic and more like a friend just trying to help another friend out, and that's pretty much it until Guest of Honor. And we're going to be coming back around to this one, so hold on to your cosplays. Daisy and Paulo clean each other's faces at Burger-Tron and get mega blushy about it. It's cute, but I don't know. I guess I would be pretty embarrassed too if one of my close friends did this to me. At the end of the chapter, Paulo avoids a hug from Daisy, but it's because of Abby's very fair and level-headed talk with him in the bathroom. In Golden Hour, Daisy bemoans Paulo acting like a bully because, well, she doesn't say why. Was she going to say because I love you? Whatever the case is, it is clear that she looks up to Paulo, so it hurts her to see him acting like this. Daisy then joins Abby and the others for their guild meeting, where she proceeds to talk mad shit about Paulo and then doesn't seem to regret it afterwards. Paulo then spends the next few chapters avoiding Daisy, which upsets her, understandably, because her bestest friend that she looks up to is ignoring her. When Abby's calm and reasonable chat with Paulo comes out into the open, after Paulo completely annihilates Daisy verbally, Abby and Daisy break up. This then leads to Paulo continuing to give Daisy the cold shoulder, despite the thing driving a wedge between them now being out of the picture. It isn't until Daisy yells her little heart out about how Abby has small dick energy, and that Daisy cared about Paulo much more than him, he starts to look at her wistfully, or like confused as to what to feel. You could make the argument that this is the moment he started to wonder if he had feelings for her. But I don't know, that kind of kills my argument, but it isn't really made clear on what he feels since he still has to literally be strong-armed by Lucy into going to her birthday party. Even after all that, he still wasn't going to go. And yeah, their conversation at the party feels like two people wanting to flirt with each other, but like kind of too scared to really go full tilt, or maybe two friends trying to rizz each other up. I mean, I rizz my friends up like this all the, okay, well maybe not like, you know, the weird romantic tension, but like I still, you know, I'm like, hey, if someone's looking sharp or they're cool or awesome, like you just tell them, you know? It doesn't necessarily have to be a romantic thing, which is how I see a lot of this, but we'll get back to that one soon. In Fair Game, Daisy talks about lucid dreaming and how one time Paulo jumped in and stopped an axe murderer, which she doesn't really mean it in any sort of romantic intent, it's just something that happened. I mean, it could have just as easily have been Mike if her brainstem had aligned for it to happen. Then Daisy clings to Paulo during Witch Hunt, and then Paulo gets super embarrassed and blushy about it, and then Daisy gets super impressed by Paulo's car ownership. Paulo also seems to be taken by this amazement. In the very next chapter, Daisy mistakes Paulo inviting her to see a movie as a date, but then David is there to ruin things, as he always does. But it is very clear that at this point, Daisy wants to be with Paulo. She even rests her head on his shoulder in the theater until they are interrupted by a bunch of angry weebs and he storms out. In track meet, they both talk about being bisexual. Nothing really Paisy is happening here. Daisy's just doing the thing that she always does for everyone, playing therapist. And good enough, Paulo explains that there's this girl that he isn't good enough for. They both play this off as him talking about Lucy, but it's clear Paulo has the hots for Daisy now. In date night, Paulo simps for James, and then gets worried when Daisy walks away. He then goes to Lucy to ask for help, but she is not available to respond at the moment, but does get back to him in rain check. And so here we are, and what have we learned? Well, from my perspective, these two work much better as close friends than lovers. I do understand why they look up to each other, as they each have what the other lacks. Paulo has real life responsibilities and freedoms, and Daisy has academic smarts and a bright future ahead. But is that something to base a relationship on? I mean, yeah, this could be a very strong friendship, but a relationship needs more than just, I admire the other person and think they're cute. That might work in high school, but when they graduate, when they really start their lives, will that be enough to sustain the relationship? The thing I've seen people bashing their heads over is, what exactly do these two have going on with each other that they will have a long, lasting, and sustainable relationship over? And it's something I've been bashing my head over too. And it's something I've reached out to the community for answers for. And honestly, I didn't get any answers to this. Let me be clear, this is cute enough in the moment, though I have reservations about how they became a couple, which I'll get to in a moment, but I cannot see this lasting long once they graduate. Simply put, Paulo and Daisy have no activities they like to do together, like things they both separately enjoy doing and can also do together, not one. And they barely ever are hanging out alone. The only time we see them together is during some event or if others are hanging out too. The only times we have ever seen them hang out alone with no one else or any sort of external event pushing them together is helping hands, and Paulo seems bored the whole time. The other time was the intermission after Boy Toy casual outing, but that's like 2 pages. Compare that to Paulo with Lucy, or Paulo with Mike, or Mike with Lucy, or hell, even Mike with Daisy, or Lucy with Daisy. It feels like everyone has spent more time with each other alone than Paulo and Daisy have. Mike and Paulo hang out and play video games, and Mike and Lucy used to hang out all the time and do all sorts of things, but Paulo and Daisy do none of that. And I know Paulo said he tries not to think of Daisy romantically, but that doesn't mean they can't do stuff together as friends. They also have nothing to really talk about. Like, Daisy acts more like a motivational crutch to Paulo, and Paulo just cries about how much of a nobody he is. They really don't have any conversations about hobbies or things they enjoy doing. I will go over their conversations now. This conversation is about saving a bird. This one is about being afraid. This conversation is about being brave. This one is about playing a weird hopscotch game across the road. This one is just Daisy not understanding the concept of Paulo's mom having walked out on him. This one is about sex. This one is about Abby. This one is about going to college. This one is about Paulo's accident after the prom. This one is about being bisexual. This one is about being a nerd. This one is about Abby. This one is about Abby. This one is about Abby. This one is about lucid dreaming. This one is about college. This one is about Abby. This one is about having a car. This one is about annoying weebs. This one is about being bisexual. This one is about having feelings for a girl. And this one is about having feelings for each other. Wow. Very cool, riveting conversations. They definitely seem to have a lot in common. I can really see how these two are meant to be lifelong lovers. And the reason I'm hammering this home so hard is because this is meant to be one of the 2 major in-game ships in the comic. One of the 2 longest running plot lines, and this is the result of it. The whole thing with these two now is they just seem to be infatuated with the success the other is having, rather than with the individual themselves. I really do not feel any sort of romantic chemistry between these two. Once again, it feels like 2 very close friends rather than lovers. I'm not saying close friends can't become lovers, but not in the way it's done here. Mike and Lucy are a great example of close friends to lovers. They spent so much time together, doing things together, and we get to see that throughout the comic. Paisy is a very clumsy ship, and the worst part is that Teshi has been planning this from the start, and this is what she did with it. It gets even worse when you consider that once they graduate, these two will have nothing in common. Daisy is going to go off and spend years at college, and what will Paulo do? Keep plugging away at some job? They will have nothing to talk about that they're both interested in. Nothing they both do together. At least right now they're both dealing with high school, but after that, they're taking separate paths in life. It's like the board game Life, where you can choose to start a career or go to college. Okay, but at least the ship setting sail was good, right? It was dramatic and bombastic, worthy of 18 years of build-up? Well, no, not really. It just kinda happens, and it's a shame because Raincheck felt like it was building up to something big. We get Daisy yelling out that she loves Paulo. That's good stuff. It's bombastic. It's in your face. It feels worthy, even if I don't really get this ship. And then Paulo bolts after her and he just hugs her and like toys with her. I guess that's cool, but not once do they tell each other that they love each other. It's just like so unceremoniously, we're boyfriend and girlfriend now. And I was falling asleep at the wheel over this. After 18 fucking years, that's all you fucking say?
Where's that goddamn cat axe? Roar, you stupid fucking Somali. Roar!
Something else I want to point out is kind of a minor thing, but it's this line from Daisy who says she wouldn't even mind Paulo dragging her down because they'd be together. That kinda sucks. I get that it's a cute thing to say in the moment, but shouldn't she be encouraging him that he can do great things instead of being like, yeah, there is the possibility my whole life gets thrown away for you, but hey, we'll be together at least. The other issue this chapter has, and how Paisy has been wrapped up in general is that neither party are active protagonists in their own love story. They'd literally just be wallowing in their self-pity for the rest of their lives if Lucy hadn't intervened. Wouldn't it have been more impactful to see one of them at least try to talk to the other, even if they knew it would probably result in failure? I mean, I'm happy Lucy is out here earning her good girl points, but when the whole ship happens because somehow Paulo just so happened to overhear Daisy's confessions, it just takes so much of the wind out of the sails. And on the subject of Lucy, had Lucy just reciprocated Paulo's feelings in After You, he never would have thought twice about Daisy. And I know that there's this one panel, but Paulo has been known to pine for many girls at once, or even boys. Daisy was never Paulo's first choice, ever. Even from day one, he was after Lucy. He went out of his way to become better at talking to girls, for better or for worse, just for her. He threw away 2 stable, loving relationships for the KO Manny, and all she had to do was accept his I love you and say it back, and Daisy would have been blown the fuck out. Literally the only reason that Paulo even is pursuing Daisy right now is because Lucy told him to kick rocks. Great OTP you have there. This ship is just, I don't know. I feel like the time for it to be interesting has long passed. So much has been done to show how totally not romantically interested they are in each other, it kind of kills it. I mean, Daisy doesn't even have any inclination of liking Paulo at all before Guest of Honor's blushy scene. But the way Paisy is being presented is just boring, and I think the fact that a major plot thread is being tied up is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here. For the majority of the comic, neither have shown any romantic interest in each other. They played off more as close friends that want to build each other up, but not in like a romantic relationship way. Paulo was adverse to any relationship with Daisy, and Daisy never really seemed interested in Paulo outside of valuing his opinion as a friend. Contrast this to Mike and Lucy, who clearly have had feelings for each other this whole time. They really didn't start getting embarrassed and blushy around each other until Guest of Honor, and that was like 2 panels, and then all of a sudden they're catching feelings just like that out of nowhere? And maybe Teshi will explain this later, but from my perspective, it doesn't feel all that well built up to. It just happens. You can't even say that it's because of Abby driving a wedge between them, because that doesn't happen until later. I was always lukewarm on them despite cream-colored joy. I think after that story, my interest in them as a ship kind of waned. There's nothing interesting to put there. They're so radically different, but not in any interesting way that they need to overcome to get together or to work together. They just think each other are cool. Realistically, they're going to go down very different paths in life. And if Daisy moves away for college, sure, Paulo might come along, but if he gets a well-established job in Roseville, he ain't going anywhere. He values his work ethic and Daisy values her academic ethic. And as time passes, they will have a hard time connecting with each other because Paulo is too dumb to understand what Daisy is doing, and Daisy won't be able to connect with all of Paulo's hobbies and his work. She isn't really inclined to want to get into other hobbies either, as we see at the end of Behind Closed Doors. And Paulo is pretty adverse to nerd shit outside of like nostalgia, so what's left? A relationship that will burn bright at the start but fade quickly as time goes on and they actually start their adult lives. They'll have fun, sure, but learn that while they like each other, there are other people out there that are better matches for them. That's just the truth of it. Even Mike and Lucy like being competitive with each other and playing games. What do Paulo and Daisy like to do together? I mean, unironically, Daisy and Abby were much better matches for each other because they were both academically inclined. They were interested in similar type things. I'm telling you all now, as someone that has had extensive experience in this, having common interests is very important for a relationship to work. You can't just work off of, well, I think the other person is neat forever. And for something that is an endgame ship, it really deserved better. Teshi had 18 years to build this up properly, to really dig into the meat and potatoes of these two having a fun relationship, but she didn't. And it's not like she doesn't know how to do that. She did it with Mike and Lucy. This ship is weak. This line right here almost saves it for me. It's a damn good line and a nice panel too, but not once have they told each other that they love each other. Let that sink in. I know this video is already very long, but let me offer a counter that isn't Mike and Lucy, as I've already used them as an example throughout this video. Paulo and Sue. I know, and I know everyone's going to say that I don't like Paisy because I'm biased, but that isn't the truth at all, and I feel as though I provided enough evidence to show why. The reason I like Paulo and Sue is because there is so much to work with there. Paulo and Sue are far more the same than they realize, and this makes them mad. That sort of thing where people hate seeing themselves in other people. They remind each other of their shortcomings that they are both too arrogant to want to work on, and that's a character flaw they can grow from with each other. Sue is not as smart as her other friends, try as she might. Hell, I think even David might be more academically smart than she is. He's just too stupid to realize it. And I think when it becomes juice and jam time, she is going to fall short of the rest of them. Sorry, colleges aren't as forgiving as high school. Sue and Paulo are the same level of intelligence, it's just that one tries too hard and the other one not enough. So it is unlikely Sue would end up moving out of Roseville. She's gonna go to a college, sure, she feels like she has to, but she won't be able to do much more than a community college. However, her willingness and drive to try new things would open her up to trying new hobbies. Look at All in the Mind. She's trying to skateboard here, even though she fails, but she wants to do it. And Paulo is good at skateboarding, and I think that her willingness to branch out is her greatest strength, even if she can't make it to the stars. She'll be frustrated, yes, but she needs someone to ground her, someone on her level to show her that even if she can't reach the stars academically, she can still do great things. And as we see, Paulo is doing just fine in that department. And I think Paulo would totally be into fantasy stuff if he watched like Lord of the Rings or something. He also needs someone to light a fire under him to actually try to achieve more than he thinks he can, and be more mature, and not in a Daisy kind of way, because clearly it's not working. And so all of this is to say that while they wouldn't necessarily be settling with each other, Paulo and Sue would definitely have a lot to do with each other if they looked past their own hubris. Paulo thinks Sue is cute. His hang up with her is her know-it-all shtick, but that's a character flaw she can overcome. And putting Sue aside, he just seems to have way more romantic chemistry with literally any other girl. Sure, it's still early in the Paisy ship, so we could see something interesting, but for my money, as it stands now, as for what Teshi has built this up to be, it's just underwhelming.
Look, I just want to be clear here. I don't actually hate these two being together. I just wish that it was, I don't know, it's missing a spark, you know? And I could go on for another 33 minutes about how we could fix this problem and what we could do to make it better. But I'll be real with you guys. I'm really tired of editing this video. I've literally thrown my all at it for the last 3 days to try to get it out for today. But the point is that I ain't out here freezing my ass in the snow to just add some visual variety to this video, just to be like, hey, I still hate these two. Listen, Paisy is a fine ship. There are worse out there. Trust me, I've unfortunately seen them. But I just feel like for something that's supposed to be the end-all be-all for these two, it deserved better. And unfortunately, that's kind of how I feel about a lot of BCB recently. Maybe not recently, but, you know, people deserve better. I mean, Teshi's literally getting paid to make this comic, and this chapter is the best she could come up with for these two. I don't know, it's a piece there, maybe like parts of pieces, but nothing that really sends it home for me. And you know, I always told myself that, look, the rest of the comic might be clumsy, but at least the endgame ships are gonna make sense, right? Like it's all worth it for that. And it just wasn't. And it's not like it was being built up for so long that there's no way it could possibly be satisfying. It's a matter of, it could be satisfying, you just didn't do it in a way that really worked for me personally, and hopefully I've been able to accurately express my feelings about this my own way, and you guys understand the way that I feel. Anyway, it's cold as hell out here. I don't know if this bit was worth it, but yeah, that's gonna bring us to the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know this was a very long one. Usually when I put out the long ones, it's because I got a lot of mean things to say, but this chapter isn't the worst chapter ever made. It might just be the most disappointing, and that's kind of rough. Anyway, what do you guys think? Do you think Paisy works, or do you think it's got a little bit more wiggle room or things that got to be done to it before it's all the way there? let me know in the comment section below, and I will see you guys next time.